Welcome to Charity Village Connects. I'm Mary Barrell. Well, it's not news that nonprofits in Canada are notoriously slow when it comes to investing in new technology. Will they be left behind when it comes to the new AI tools that are already revolutionizing our world and our work? Not if we can help it. In this episode of Charity Village Connects, we're exploring practical ways with real world examples of how AI can be used by nonprofit organizations to streamline workflow, add efficiencies, and be used to complete administrative tasks in order to free up humans for more important and impactful work. Is there a way to responsibly and effectively harness the power of AI for social good? To discuss these important issues, please welcome Jason Shim. Jason serves as Chief Digital Officer of the Canadian Centre for Nonprofit Digital Resilience, or CCNDR, which aims to build a digitally enabled nonprofit sector where Canada's nonprofits use data and tech to advance their missions and maximize their impact. As an experienced digital executive, Jason provides his leadership to help organizations stay ahead of the technology curve. He successfully championed organization-wide digital-first approaches for nonprofits and has developed and implemented strategies that support operations, marketing, fundraising, and program delivery. Welcome back to the podcast, Jason.
Yeah, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, we spoke in 2023, which seems like such a long time ago when in relation to AI and the developments that have happened. And I'm curious, over the past couple of years, how are Canadian nonprofits currently using artificial intelligence in their work? And what patterns or trends are emerging across the sector?
Well, first of all, I'll start with the patterns and trends is that since we last talked in 2023, we're definitely seeing more organizations that are adopting AI. And however, the adoption is still in its early stages. And as of 2024, according to StatsCan, that the number was sitting at about 4.8% of nonprofits. And I'm seeing that steadily increase, anecdotally as well, by show of hands when I give presentations on AI, that the number of people who are raising their hands in the audience has been steadily increasing as well. Uh, what I am observing as well is that when it comes to nonprofits that are using AI in their work, it really depends on the organization as well as the individual roles within the organization. So I think that over time, that more folks are reporting that they are using AI in part because many of the pre-existing tools that people are already using, like Google Workspace or Microsoft Office or Canva, are integrating many AI features into it. So we're seeing more people who are able to use features like built-in summarization tools or things like the auto transcription functions in the meeting tools, as well as meeting note-taking. And so for tools like Canva, there are also functions that assist with image editing and generation, as well as drafting up marketing materials, for example. And finally, there are instances of ChatGPT, which is the big one that many people are aware of, and people who are using those language models to summarize text or compose drafts or reports. I think the one major shift has been also the wide availability of these language models. So, it's available online. It's for free for the basic accounts. And on the technical side, one theme that I'm seeing emerge more so is that for some nonprofits who do have technical staff, that things like GitHub Copilot or Cursor to generate code or prototypes for debugging. So that is something that has seen tremendous growth. Definitely on the for-profit side, and seeing that grow on the nonprofit side as well among technical staff. And finally, they're starting to hear more case studies. So more nonprofits who are weaving it into and exploring how they can use it for program delivery or analyzing data. We are still seeing continued emerging use cases for it, but broadly speaking, seeing a gradual adoption from a trend perspective.
So I guess there's an increasing simultaneously, increasing comfort with some of these tools because they're already, as you say, embedded in the tools that they've been using all along. And so that, I guess that sort of familiarity helps them take that next step.
Yeah, I think that it's hard to read anything online without hearing any mention of AI, and certainly it's top of mind for many organizations. Whether or not they're speaking about it in the sense of like using it actively, but there is a greater awareness that AI is there, it is out there. However, I think it's also important that organizations learn more about it and also are aware of some of the things that they need to be aware of, such as data security, in order to use it effectively. So I think the big one to take into consideration is that a frequent conversation that I am having more regularly is that many folks aren't aware of some of the risks that may come with using some of the free AI models, and the risk that that data may be used to train the models as well. So making sure that data is protected and safely used.
Yeah, I want to go into some of that in more detail a little further on in our discussion. But first off, I want to actually ask you what is CCNDR's perspective on the role of AI in enhancing digital resilience among nonprofits? What work are you doing to support the sector in this area?
hmm So with regards to the Cinder's perspective on AI, I think there's definitely an opportunity for nonprofits to use AI, just as many other technologies to first and foremost advance their missions. And so, I think that is one of the key things that organizations need to keep in mind is that, yes, this is a new emerging technology that has much potential, but centering it on fundamentally identifying how does this help us advance our fundamental mission. And so, really, our role is in helping to develop, share, and support resources around um, uh, AI for nonprofits who are looking to engage and learn more. And so, some of the work that we're doing is supporting the future proofing the community service workforce project. Which is focused on identifying and addressing the digital skills gap in Canadian nonprofits. And we're also currently working on a project around an AI impact hub, which is set to be launched this fall, and will provide more specific resources for Canadian nonprofits to learn more and advance their knowledge with regards to AI and how it can help their organizations as well as their job roles.
And sorry, when did you say that was coming out?
That'll be coming out this fall.
Okay, terrific. And what are the biggest barriers preventing nonprofits in Canada from integrating AI tools into their operations? Are they financial, or are they cultural, ethical, or just fear of the unknown? What do you think some of the barriers are for most nonprofits in Canada?
Yeah. So I think that when it comes to barriers, there's a few key barriers when it comes to addressing some of the gaps, specifically when it comes to the digital skills perspective with regards to AI. And so one that has been identified is around financial and resource constraints are seen as some of the largest barriers to implementing solutions around specifically the digital skills part of it. And next up, it's followed by simply feeling kind of overwhelmed. So the feedback is also that folks are feeling that they're not sure how or where to start or progress. And so interestingly, we've also received that feedback when it comes to issues around cybersecurity and how to advance that within organizations. So the sense of like trying to figure out, okay, there's this technology that has potential, but what do we do with it? And with AI, it's appeared very quickly, and organizations are trying to quickly, figure out what to do with it. How does it impact our organization? How can we use it effectively? So, I think that for AI to be implemented effectively within organizations, like let's set aside AI temporarily, as a broad concept, but there are some other things for general implementation of technology that also apply generally in addition to AI. And so those are things like ensuring that there are policies and governance. Are there policies to help guide the usage of technology? Are there policies around data, things like data retention, et cetera? And the other is around resourcing, which we touched upon earlier. Is there a dedicated role or function dedicated to technology, and does the budget reflect that dedicated resourcing for technology as well? So I think that there certainly are a number of barriers, but those are some of the ones that immediately come to mind.
Well, given the increasing scrutiny around ethics and AI, how should nonprofits approach using this technology, especially when it comes to service delivery and donor engagement and confidentiality matters? Do you have any advice?
Yeah, I think this goes back to the organization's mission, vision, and values more than ever. Uh, I think organizations really need to assess how they're going to be living out their values. And just as how this plays out for things like donor acceptance policies that help guide decision making around donations. Similarly, how does an organization's mission and values play out when it comes to their technology policies or AA policies and implementation? So I think that for organizations, when considering AI, they need to ensure that some of the broader things around policies and governance are taken care of in order to effectively ground that with regards to the ethics and AI question. Um, Generally, I think that nonprofits need to be mindful that it's not necessarily an all or nothing approach, where sometimes there's a sense of like, oh, we need to figure out all the things with regards to AI. It is possible to start with a basic policy. There was this term that I encountered a number of years ago that I quite appreciated, and it was a minimum viable policy. And so, is there a basic policy that can provide, essential protections around, using the basics of AI so that you can have enough to launch a internal pilot to determine what the capabilities are around some of the AI functions and determine if there may be some value that it can add to, the things that your organization is doing. And with regards to uh, ethics and AI, ensuring that these principles are embedded within the organizational understanding, such as human in the loop. So ensuring that as part of the accountability, that any outputs that are generated by AI are reviewed by humans before it is shared, with the general public or used in general. So still, putting into place some of those essential protections, but broadly, taking care of some of those broader, policy and governance pieces.
And so, if somebody's looking for one of those sort of the basic minimum standards, where can they find those policies?
Yeah, so there's a resource that is available on hrintervals.ca, and if you search for AI policy, that there will be an article that will detail some of those as well. And N10 also has an AI resource hub that is also quite helpful in that regard. So both those resources are great places to start.
Okay, that's great. That's really great information. Very useful. I'm sure it's something that leaders have been pondering about and quite challenged. Now, we always know that nonprofits and charities are frequently very sensitive to costs and have somewhat constrained budgets. Um, and it must be, especially for the smaller organizations, extremely tempting to use the free versions of, for example, ChatGPT that might be available for some of their AI functions that they want to use it for. What are some of the risks? You mentioned risks off the top of our discussion about that. Could you outline what the risks are for folks who may not understand this fully?
Yeah. So I remember many years ago when folks were starting to get online that a general uh, a thing to keep in mind was don't share anything on the internet that you wouldn't want posted on a bulletin board. And so there's the considerations around sharing private information with a public language model uh, is a variation of that. So one of the things to consider is that if you're not paying to use the product, you may be the product itself. And so, if you are copying and pasting private information from your organization into a language model like the free version of ChatGPT, there is a potential risk that what you're copying and pasting may be used to guide the training of the data sets that are used to generate responses. And so the risk is that at some future point, someone may pose a question, and bits and parts of the data that you've previously copied and pasted into the language model may appear in very in kind of a fractured form, and there have been proof of concepts of folks who have put together research around generating prompts to exfiltrate data that may have been used in some of the training data sets as well. So there are some organizations in the technical space that have outright banned their developers from using some of the language models for fear of their private proprietary code being exposed to the language model. And so there are ways to mitigate against that, and one of the ways is to make sure you're reading the fine print in the user agreements. And many of the models have paid or enterprise tiers that, if you're paying for the product in the fine print, there may be something that explicitly outlines we will not be using your queries to train our models as well, thereby ensuring that the data that you are putting in is protected. There are other ways as well, to protect your data, and that may involve having a more technical implementation that involves having a standalone model that isn't connected to the broader internet, that is self-hosted. It does require more technical expertise in-house to make that possible, but I'm putting that out there so that folks are aware that there are other ways of approaching it, that it doesn't always have to be the big models that are out there that you're accessing on the broader internet, that you can download models, put it in a decently fast computer, and you could even host it on a pretty fast laptop or desktop, and completely disconnect it from the internet and interface with that. But again, that does require a bit more of a technical lift, but it is possible, especially if folks are concerned about data privacy and security. So there's a few different ways of approaching it, but the most important thing to keep in mind is what I just described around the dynamics around if you're not aware about some of the fine print of the free models, well, now you know.
Well, that's really valuable information. Of course, it relates to privacy and confidentiality, and certainly there's a lot of areas where nonprofits and charities operate where confidential information and private information, both in terms of their donors, but also the clients that they serve, could very well be at risk if they weren't prepared to do that little legwork and understand how to use it effectively when they're embracing AI. There's also, as I understand, and I think I've experienced it a couple of times when I've been playing with my AI tools, that AI can just simply hallucinate or make things up, or almost in an effort to please you as the person who's giving it the prompts and the queries. Could you describe some of the risks related to that for nonprofits and charities who are exploring AI?
Absolutely. So one of the risks with AI is that the algorithms on which it is built, like, it is essentially a really, really good next word filler. And so, the example that I often hear is like, if you were to say Mary had a little lamb, and that is something that most people know how to fill in the next word, and imagine the AI is really, really good at that and can fill out entire paragraphs or sentences or entire documents. Now, the trouble with that is that most of the time it'll spit out something reasonable sounding. However, there is a risk in that, because it's constantly generating things that are reasonable sounding, that it may be very confidently incorrect in some of what it generates with regards to hallucinations. And so that's why it's really important to have things like human in the loop system that is also reviewing the content that is being generated to make sure that what is being generated is actually grounded in truth and actual fact. one of the really interesting things that I've been observing, especially in the last few months, is that uh, with regards to hallucinations, that there are some of the older models are still hallucinating, a decent amount. But what we're seeing in some of the emerging models as well is uh, doing a kind of a second uh, review, or to verify the facts and also ground it as well. So, uh, however, it's still important to make sure that even with these developments in the models to try and reduce hallucinations, that you know we still need to assess whether the models are accurate. And that's something that I'm constantly encouraging folks to test, where it's like, um, don't just take the AI's word for it. Constantly you need to be testing it against um, certain prompts to see how accurate it is. And there's a set of standard prompts that I use for myself in terms of getting a sense of how good a model is at certain things, or how accurate it is. And so that is something that people definitely need to keep in mind around hallucinations.
I've started asking it for providing citations of where they're getting the information, and that I've found has helped. You just have to put in the extra effort to actually check those citations and make sure they're real things. But I guess that's another possibility.
Absolutely, that's a great way to vet and verify the information. That sometimes if it is stating a whole bunch of information and not providing citations, that you can further prompt the AI to be like, all right, show me your proof, show me your work. And when it comes to developing prompts, there are certain ways that you can phrase things to ensure that it's going through a step-by-step procedure to think through things carefully. And so uh, one of the ways is to ask the AI to conduct a certain task, and then ask it to show me step by step how you are thinking through the problem, and show me all your work. And so that will encourage it to show the step by step thinking as to how it arrived at its conclusion, as well as the relevant citations.
The other thing that I've noticed in my use of it is it tends to default to a shorter version of whatever you're working on. In a sense, I imagine it's because, I mean, it's a paid version that I'm using, and it's as though because of the demand that's being placed on its servers, etc., by other users, that it is reducing the output, um, like literally deleting sections, and I guess making a decision of what it considers to be relevant and pertinent information or details, and what isn't. And I'm just curious whether you've also come across that kind of tendency.
Yeah, it really depends on the type of model that you're using and the specific service. And so what you're describing is would typically be attributed to a limited, what's called a context window. And a context window refers to the amount of text or content that an AI will take to understand as part of the question or the query that you're prompting it with. And so, if you're copying and pasting, say, a 50-page document, it will depend on the specific combination of the model that is being used, as well as the provider. And so, some of the language model services have like what's called like a million token context window, which is tremendous, which is hundreds of pages that you can search through, while others, depending on the one that's selected, may have a smaller context window. And um, the challenge is that when you have a smaller context window, is that as the conversation progresses, it may, like you said, it may leave off some of the things that you were talking about earlier in the conversation, and so it has a kind of limited memory of that. And so that's one of the constraints, that it's really interesting to kind of think through the prompting as to how you can uh, I'd say decompose the questions that you may be posing to an AI. And one of the tactical tips that I often suggest to folks is um, to actually use the AI as kind of a meta prompter. And what I mean by that is, before starting on the conversation that you're trying to engage with for the AI, you can use a prompt in the kind of following format that you are an AI expert, and here is a challenge that I'm trying to solve. Please provide me with a prompt to get the best answer possible out of you, and just see what it comes up with. And oftentimes the AI will actually help you use it more effectively, and it'll, sometimes it'll generate like a step-by-step prompt, and you'll get a much more fulsome response. But also, if you put in the additional details around having a limited context window, that it may help decompose the response around like, all right, break it down into uh, this query, and then use this query as part of a separate one to try and get more fulsome responses that you then would kind of reassemble at the tail end. Uh, I think that over time the context windows will get larger and more manageable, but we are still in uh, the growing uh, adoption and uh, the, I think there will be a future in which you will be able to seamlessly import like very, very large documents and have it actually remember everything at the beginning. But we're steadily moving past the AI goldfish memory.
I'm curious, is CCNDR conducting any research on nonprofit use in terms of what areas nonprofits are engaging with AI on in specifically in Canada? And I'm curious whether you could share a few inspiring or maybe perhaps unexpected real world examples of Canadian nonprofits using AI effectively.
Yeah. So we're currently in the process of also working with Imagine Canada in developing a sector survey that will touch upon AI as well. So that is something that's underway. And as I mentioned earlier, we're also developing the AI Impact Hub that will help nonprofits that are looking for resources as well. And I think as part of that, we'll also over time get a sense of what nonprofits are looking for with regards to resources to provide better ones over time as well. Uh, with regards to some of the real world examples, I think the ones that come to mind are, I mean, there's the example of Furniture Bank that made use of AI to generate imagery to depict its mission as part of its campaigns, and being able to do so without necessarily having to go through the expense of uh, having to you know uh, manage an entire campaign, and feeling that they were also further having to ask more of their the constituents that they serve to also have to participate in the campaign. So that was a really innovative way of looking at how AI could be used for their marketing campaigns as well. Um, the others that come to mind, there's certainly Kids Help Phone and the examples of using AI to triage texters that were using its texting service that identified as high risk, and also in analyzing the data. Uh, in terms of unexpected real world examples, I think there's a couple that I'll identify that I've seen more recently in the last couple of weeks, where the models that have been recently released by Google using the Gemini Canvas is that it gives a capability to import really dense research reports, and that you can ask the AI to generate an interactive um, uh, app or a website to better understand some of the concepts that are presented. And it has been quite remarkable to see what it comes up with, and also to present some interesting visualizations around some data that would otherwise be quite dense and locked up in tables within a research report. So I think there's definitely some really interesting potential that has emerged there. And the other is around things like classification for public data sets. And so, some very, very large data sets that might be tens of thousands of rows that typically manually would take, the better part of a couple of days to, slowly, go through each one, that a well-trained AI classifier, can do the work in the background, thereby, freeing up time for folks to do the more advanced analysis, or to, take on, additional data sets as well. So I think those are some of the emerging kind of examples of, how some of the AI is being used.
Well, I'm curious what you talked a little bit about this, but I'd like to get a little more detail. What skills or competencies should nonprofit leaders and staff build so that they can confidently and responsibly engage with AI tools?
Yeah, I think that broadly it's first ensuring that internally that there's a clear understanding of what it is that needs to be done. And so, when you go back to basics, understanding that if you are to train an AI in the future to do, whichever task, that something like a standard operating procedure document, goes a long way. So, I think that when it comes to some of the internal resources, things like, documentation and standard operating procedures are really important. Um, Overall, I think also curiosity plays a pretty big role in it, in that it's having the openness to learn and to adapt, and to identify, the ways that AI may or may not intersect with the work that is being done. And so, definitely, I think, broadly, yes, there is like the digital skills in general, but underlying that is also the willingness and curiosity to engage with, some of the emerging technology that is coming out, and, whether it be AI or whether it be, technology skills that extend to how staff understand their use of software in their day to day. It's really about trying to foster those skills of making those connections, and sometimes, experimenting a little bit to see, what's out there. I think that the challenge is that, we can uh, we can wait for the opportunities to emerge with regards to hearing how other people are using AI or other technologies, and that's certainly, one that is helpful when there are specific examples that are presented. But I think because AI is moving so quickly, that one of it is um, identifying um, as the technology evolves, and as, the job roles evolve as well, to see, how it could be used in running those small little internal pilots, to see how it can be used internally. So I think, flexibility, curiosity are certainly important things within organizations.
Yeah, and I guess, in time is to have the time to experiment and learn. That's a luxury in a lot of organizations, especially the smaller nonprofits. How can smaller nonprofits or those with limited resources navigate the growing AI landscape without being left behind? Are there any tips or advice that you might have, or even resources that you would recommend that they uh, try to tap into?
Yeah. So I think that many of the pre-existing software packages that nonprofits currently have access to are steadily adding additional AI functionality. And so, as people are continuing to use, these various, software packages, that they may see little AI pop-ups, here and there. And so, taking a moment to sometimes, familiarize themselves with, what is emerging there. And so that may be the form for many organizations. It will be through their existing productivity suites or online tools, in which, they will be naturally using AI without necessarily calling it AI. I think that one of the challenges is the nomenclature of AI, in that there are many organizations that were using things like transcription software, prior to the most recent wave of, AI and generative AI and such. But it wasn't necessarily called AI at the time. It was just, called, transcription. And so, I think it's also being aware that some of as the AI landscape continues to evolve, that for uh, many organizations and individuals, like they already are using AI and are progressing just by what is already available to them. Uh, I think that the some of what we chatted about before is the general awareness of with regards to how data is used. So without being left behind, it's being able to uh, adopt and adapt the technology while also being aware of the risks. And so, when that is established, then it allows an organization to move more quickly in that they're aware of what are the risks that are out there, because they may have developed an internal policy to help guide, some of that usage, and uh, and that it can empower staff to quickly identify, what are the technologies that may help them, engage with AI and to improve in their kind of job roles. And so with limited resources, I think recognizing, like I said, many of the existing productivity suites may have AI baked in, but if not, I would suggest examining what a paid account may look like, even if it's for a pilot, just to be aware and to get a sense of what the systems are able to do, and ensuring that data protections are in place. And so, like I said before, the models are evolving and adapting very quickly. And so even in the past month, there are capabilities that weren't possible 3 months ago that are suddenly available in the past 2 weeks. And so, having a paid account to keep a pulse on things is can be one of the ways to at least to keep an eye out on what is possible, and to continually assess what might be possible for an organization to do with regards to AI.
Well, we touched on this a little bit earlier, but I thought it was worth taking a deeper dive because it's so very important that as nonprofits explore AI, data governance, cybersecurity, and internal policies become really crucial. What best practices should they follow to maintain trust with the communities that they serve and to ensure that they're comfortable with the kind of guardrails that they've put in place with their organizations?
Yeah. So I think that first starting with clear policies and expectations for staff. And so when you are able to ensure that everyone's on the same page with regards to how data is used within the organization and what are the specific guardrails, that can give very uh, clear indications that you can also confidently say and convey that yes, this is how we use data. Everyone has been trained on it accordingly, and this is how we move forward with regards to maintaining trust with communities. And so, some of the things like we touched upon, that that you're not sharing private data with some of the free services, that we're also reading through the fine print of the services that are being used. Um, and also that the other policies, in addition to AI, are accounted for and taken care of. So in addition to AI policies, making sure that organization has taken into consideration their data governance policies, their cybersecurity policies. These are all kind of interconnected, and so within the cybersecurity policies, one thing that I'm really big on, and I know that we've chatted about in other conversations around, like, make sure you have multi-factor authentication turned on to make sure you have those multiple layers in place. But all of this is to ensure that there is at the end of the day accountability, and ensuring that there are also additional considerations like human in the loop, within your AI policy. And so with regards to resources, yeah, like folks can find more information on hrintervals.ca. And that I think it's also ensuring that organizations are constantly learning about what's out there, and I think that comes along with maintaining the trust in the communities that are being served. So being knowledgeable about the AI that they're using, but also what is emerging. So you know, many folks may not be aware that you know that they can host their own AI models, but that is something that you can ask for explicitly if you're working with a vendor. If they are offering, oh, you can do this and this, and it's all connected to these models in the cloud that with the knowledge that it's like, oh, but there's what are the pros and cons of hosting our own model as well. So even just the awareness of privacy protecting approaches to AI can be helpful in terms of maintaining that trust as well.
And I guess just to wrap up our discussion, where do you see the greatest opportunities for AI in the Canadian nonprofit sector over the next coming years? What role do you hope CCNDR will play in shaping that future?
I mean, I think that's the most exciting question for sure, because I think when I think about what's happened in the last 5 years and being able to extrapolate, where we are today, like I think it would have been, quite a challenge to imagine, all the capabilities that we have today. So I think that the greatest opportunity is the future in which we'll all be collectively writing together, and that what comes to mind is the magic wand question. Is that in 5 years, if we ask the question, if you could wave the magic wand, what would be true? And compile a list of all those things for nonprofits, that in 5 years, more and more of those things there is a distinct possibility that AI will be able to enable a good chunk of those things. And it's, being able to determine, what are those things that AI can match up with. And so that's where I see the opportunities, and that I think there will be significant advancements for AI that will continue into the next 5 years, and that the role that Cinder can play is really helping the nonprofit sector and folks working in nonprofits to feel confident in using AI among other technologies, and also to help shape the direction that it takes. So. Sky's the limit, and it'll really depend on the how boldly we can imagine together.
Well, Jason, thank you for being so generous as to share your insights and advice to Canadian nonprofits who are still struggling to learn how to harness the power of AI for their own purpose driven work. Thank you for joining us on Charity Village Connects.
Thanks for having me.